Hello, everyone. I'm Christian Roberts. I'm here with my fabulous friend and co-host,
Quo Johnson.
and we are back yet again with another episode of Taking the Stage with Christian.
And Quo. And as we begin every episode, we'd like to start this episode with a land and people acknowledgement. Do you want to take the time right here, right now in this space to acknowledge that we in Dallas are on stolen land? We are on the land of the Caddo, the Wichita, and the Comanche sovereign nations, nations of beautiful human beings who lived the full human experience, who loved, who lost, who fought, who cultivated the land since time immemorial. Nations of human beings who also faced horrible conditions, including genocide and policy that allowed for forceful removal by any means necessary. We also want to take the time to acknowledge that people were stolen from their homes off the coast of Africa and brought to this nation and forced into free and enslaved labor. From the free and enslaved labor, from the stolen lives, the stolen land, the stolen people, the stolen labor, we have what we enjoy as Dallas. Dallas is not alone in this, as we enjoy the entire nation because of these stolen things. We do this not to cast blame at all, but to acknowledge truth, because truth is necessary in how we connect, how we reduce the harm, how we heal the harm going forward, and how we create a better world together. So thank you for joining us for this land and this people acknowledgement.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this episode today. It's been a while. We've been away getting some rest and rethinking some things. Just from everything, life. The way we want the show to go. Thinking about what we're seeing in the world today, and just really getting together and talking about how to address some of these things. So we thank you so much for continuing to stick with us. We apologize for technical difficulties we've had
Technical
lately trying to go live, but we are
difficulties.
working on getting those fixed. But we also did not want to leave you without hearing from us because it has been a while. One of the things we're going to talk about today, Bo and I talked about this episode because James Baldwin's quote, we must 100% must give, pay a little homage to him. And what he says in this quote, when he says, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. And, Baldwin was very bold in talking about issues of equality, equity in this country, talking along the lines of progress, all of those different types of things. So we wanted to make sure that we dove into this episode today, thinking about that in terms of where we are in the arts concerning equity, diversity, and inclusion, and of course, belonging and justice. So, Quote, without further ado, let's jump and dive right on in.
Yes, diving in after a long time away. So, this is an exciting topic. We titled this, I Cannot or I Can't Believe What You Say Because I See What You Do. We've talked about this before in the show when that impact always outweighs intent. Intent does not outweigh impact. Intentions matter, impact matters more. We have heard a lot of companies, a lot of people voice an intention to do something different, to change, to do more, to slow down, to stop having such a busy schedule, to start centering the humanity of the work in the organization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we see you doing something completely different. We see you doing the opposite of what you said you intend to do. Um, I can't believe you because you're not doing what you said you were going to do, right? And we titled it as such because there's been this ongoing conversation and concern that we did not truly learn in anything in these past 2 years, other than as a performing arts organization, how to perform as though we understand, how to present ourselves as though we understand, how to present ourselves as though we are actively looking for new members, right? Looking for new staff members, but then still reverting back to the traditional ways and how we hire, still reverting back to the traditional ways, traditional, right? And how we engage the community, how we determine the season, how we provide support for staff members, all of these things. And so we can't believe what you say because we see what you do. And that goes for everyone. We want to get to a space where we have the courage to voice what we want to do, right? To voice our intentions, but to also have the humility to know that it takes so much more than just voicing your intentions in order to enact change. So in voicing the intentions, having the humility to actively start to disrupt the ways that our processes and our systems are self-sustaining, right? And that they have to actively be disrupted. So have the humility to disrupt those things so that we can actually change, so that once we get to a space of saying, hey, this is our intent, people believe it because they see the impact. So that's where all of this is coming from.
About this is we realize that it's not going to happen right away. Let me be very clear on that. Many people will say, well, it's going to take time, and not knocking that, not saying that it's not going to take time. That's true of anything that you're trying to work on, or when you're trying to disrupt and then rebuild, dismantle and replace. When you're trying to do something like that, of course it's going to take time, right?
Mhm.
I know we've got hot shot building equipment and all kind of stuff right now. We can put up buildings just like that. Construction. I mean, if you come to Dallas, there's a new building or high rise or something popping up every 2 seconds, and we see how fast they go up, and we marvel at that. But the bottom line is that in order for those structures to go up and be stable and be sound and sustainable, you have to make sure that when you're putting the framing in place, that it's something that's going to be able to hold anything else that you put into it on it. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Anybody in construction will tell you that the foundation has to be there. And then when you begin building the framework around it, right, that has to be sturdy and solid. And what I am finding now is that people are asking folks to come and engage with their organizations, or they're coming and asking them to be involved in their organization. And we said this on the program before. You cannot invite somebody into your house and say, we would like you to come work here. We would like you to come direct here. We would like you to come conduct here. And then you integrate them into an environment that is not conducive to them being able to do the job that you hired them to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because you don't invite somebody into your home and tell them, now this is our home and we're going to make a difference, but you hand them the broom to do all the work.
Yeah.
This is a problem, right? You do it to clean up years of mess. So we have to have this conversation. Now, don't get me wrong, we have to produce seasons. We understand that. Okay. I've been at this for a long time. Quo's been at this for a long time. We completely understand that. Quo has worked at more art, being engaged with more art institutions across the world, and can tell you the different things that she sees in some of these places, and places that she works with. And I say that because we know this is not just an opera problem, right?
Right.
It's a
Right.
societal
It's
problem,
systemic.
all right?
Yeah.
It's systemic. But the bottom line is you're going to have to produce opera like you would do in a season, but you're also going to have to do this if you are to move in the direction that opera needs to go,
Right. Right.
right? So you're
Right.
going to have to do equity, belonging, right? You're going to have to do the diversity and inclusion, but the diversity cannot come without the equity happening
Yep.
first. So many people want to focus on diversity and inclusion. Listen to me. We can make anything superficial. If you just want that picture of your organization, okay, of your group to look diverse on the outside, so you can just put it up in front of people, all right, then just say that.
Yeah.
If you really, but that's the bottom line, right? When you do that superficial stuff, and then you start going and don't go to the root of some of these systemic issues that we've been talking to, you end up having people who are tired, people who get burnt out, people who feel like they have no place in this industry, and not even in just this industry, in this society in which
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
live, right? We always say that it's going to happen outside the opera house, you better believe it's going to happen inside the opera house, because people are inside and
Yep.
outside of
Same
the opera
people.
house, right? The systemic issues are outside and inside the opera house. And that's the all offices and the rehearsal rooms and everything. So I say this because we have work ahead of us. But we have to remember that in order to do this work the way that you said you were going to do, In order to do it, you have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time.
Right.
At the same time that you're trying to put up that performance, you have to remember that there are human beings that are responsible for
Right.
putting that work on stage. All right. They're responsible for raising the money for that work to go on stage. Right. That's what has to happen. So it has to be human centered. And we have to continue to try to do the work that in 2020 we said we were going to do.
And not just
I'm
in
gonna step off my
2020.
soapbox.
That's a good soapbox. I mean, preach on. And not just in 2020. Like, these are the things that we've been saying, and it's gotten to a point where people have just become skilled at integrating these words and this language without truly understanding purpose or without actually enacting. Some people understand, but perhaps it's not being enacted in a way that is meaningful because we're still trying to hold on to the same structures. We said before, you don't fold equity in. Equity is radical. It is going to undo the things that you have been doing because it is going to change from the root, from the bottom. It is going to change what is happening. It is going to change how it happens. It is going to have you question why it is happening. Yes, opera companies need to question why we are here. Why are we doing opera? Why are we asking people to show up, to sit down, to sit for hours sometimes, to listen and to watch and to engage in what we bring to the community, what we bring to our constituents, what we bring to the world? Yes, you should sit and you have to answer that question. And if you're going to be equitable about it, then it's not going to be the exact same answer that it's been in the past, right? That starts to shift. Because it starts to take a different meaning. So when we're looking at saying something, right, and then doing something differently, we want to find the path. And we say all the time, especially in that intent does not outweigh impact. Intent matters, yes. Impact matters more. Actions matter more. It matters more. So if we find that our impact does not align with our intentions, what we meant to happen is not happening, right? That means we look at our intentions. Is this what we really meant to happen? And is that what needs to be happening? Cool, check. That's what needs to happen. Okay. Then we start to change our actions so that that is actually what happens. The impact is how we start to measure whether or not our intentions are actually getting across. We don't just stop at intentions. Well, I meant to do this. I intended to do this with this community, but it didn't work out. Cool, but what were your actions? What led to the impact that you have that does not align with your intentions? So as we look at what it means for us to actually, like I say, be about this life, know that equity in real time is not comfortable. It does not go on a regularly scheduled plan, right? Oh, I'm just going to, plan when I'm going to be equitable. Not at first. It certainly does not. Some things have to move quicker than others. Kristian shared, take some time. During the conference in Minneapolis this year, we had the Racial Justice and Action conversation, and we talked about how some things take time. And my brother Garrett McQueen also quoted James Baldwin. You took my grandmother's time. You took my mother's time.
You're taking my father's time,
My father's time.
my brothers and sisters' time, my nieces and my nephews' time.
How
How
much
much
time?
time
Right.
do you need? How much time do you want actually for your progress? Your progress.
Right. Right. Equity in this field cannot move. Progress cannot move at the rate of your comfort. We've heard that before. So you have to not just get uncomfortable, get used to not being uncomfortable, right? Because when you get used to being uncomfortable, you're trying to make it comfortable. Get used to finding ways to respond to being uncomfortable in ways that are productive, in ways that are effective, in ways that allow you to be in spaces with other people, even when you're uncomfortable, to be able to co-create something meaningful. So I would not say get used to being uncomfortable because you're still trying to control whether or not you're comfortable, right? Trying to get used to it. Get used to responding to being uncomfortable in a way that is meaningful, because that is what it's going to take in order for us to move forward. We see you putting out statements still, right? Still see putting out positions, right? And jobs and positions and opportunities. See you hiring people. We'll focus on race right now, but it expands to everyone, right? hiring people of color and bringing them into organizations without truly understanding that when you bring someone in who is not normally a part of the fabric of the organization, that means the organization needs to shift, not the person. The organization needs to shift and to expand, just as you would when you bring in a different voice, right, into a fold, that the whole chorus starts to expand, right, to take in all those different colors and timbres. We see people being hired to do one job, but then expected to also address all the problems of the organization and to address centuries worth of issues in the nation. You hired me to do this one thing, right? But I also happen to have this identity. You hired me to do this. I happen to have the identity of LGBTQ. I happen to have the identity of being a person of color. I happen to have the identity of fill in the blank, right? And now you want me to address all of those issues, teach the entire organization, and do my job. I promise you're not paying people enough for that. I promise you're not paying anybody enough for that.
Let me just drop this one flying over, my friend, because when you said that, there's this phenomenon right now called quiet quitting.
Oh, quiet quitting.
That is probably one of the most foolish terms I have ever
Not
heard.
foolish.
So people stop doing extra and people have decided to do the work they were paid to do, and that's called quiet quitting. I saw somebody online, I can't remember what it was, but they said, no, let's call it acting our wage.
Acting our wage. Acting our
But I
wage.
busted out laughing. But my point is this. I bring that up because we work in an industry, we are creative people. We are passionate. We will go above and beyond. But you have to understand when things are systemic, particularly something as volatile as race relations, particularly as something as LGBTQ, okay, our brothers and sisters there, especially since we're dealing with these things that are right on the front lines in our country right now, okay, right on the front lines of our country right now. You have to understand the weight of having to bear that in society and be that in society. You're just trying to be who you are, right? And then you come into work, whatever work is, all right, and have somebody that paid lip service to get you on there, and then you realize that no, actually, it's all expected to come out of me, or oh no, they really didn't want me here. They just hired me, to add a little more color to the roster or something like
Mm,
that. And folks,
talk
I'm
about it.
only saying this because these are things that I've heard people say, and not just in opera. I've heard this said in people who work in the hospitality industry. I've heard people who work in factory jobs, manufacturing jobs have said this to me. I have a family that is in all different kinds of fields and in medicine. I mean, you name it. And I've heard so many people say that. And y'all, that's hurtful.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. That human that is there that is trying to bring their skill into to an organization and they end up feeling like that and feeling tokenized. We got to do better. We must do better, particularly in a creative art form. There are so many things we already have to address as an industry, namely the repertoire.
Uh,
There are things we already have to address, right? That reflect what's going on in society and the implications of those particular pieces that are controversial now in the 21st century. Why add to that? I'm sorry, I got on a soapbox for a second, but like there are things that opera already has to contend with without having to contend with some of the foolishness that we have seen.
uh,
And I only say that because there are people that are really hurting. There are people who are leaving the industry because they're like, I can't do this anymore. They love it and they leave with tears in their eyes because they know if they stay any longer, it is going to break them.
yep. Yep.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal. It's like our teachers that leave their jobs after all the stuff they've had to put up with, and they leave with tears in their eyes because they love what they do, but they cannot sustain themselves, their families, their lives, and their
Yeah.
mental health, their physical health with it, right? And we are in an industry where we serve, we put beauty on the stage, and we invite people in to see it, or we go out into the community and we put it on the back of a truck, we mic it, we put it on the football field, whatever it is that we do, but we invite people to come experience this. Make sure that when you're inviting people to come experience this, or you get an invitation to go to somebody else's neighborhood to put that out there, you have to be mindful, of what you're putting out there. Okay. You have to be mindful
Hmm.
of the people who are on your staff who reflect that community. Okay, particularly those of you who work in education and community engagement,
Yeah.
right? This is what we do. So we have to be cognizant of the things that are going on with people. All right. And I will also say this to my people of color out there right now, my BIPOC folks. It is not your responsibility to turn around your entire organization. There's no way you can do that by yourself. It's been going, and not only that, not just your organization, the entire world and the
The world.
entire 400 years of systemic mess that we
Right.
are trying to untangle right now in general
Right.
as a society, in our society now. It is not your responsibility to do that. You work on what you can do.
Yep.
You do what you can do in the position that you're in, and you do your best with it. But please
Yep.
don't take on that full responsibility because it's not yours to bear alone.
Yep, it is absolutely not yours to bear alone, and it is not possible for you to bear alone. Many times people get excited about a certain somebody being at an organization. Don't get me wrong, there can be a shift. Know that the space shifts just by you being there. Just by you being there, this is why diversity of thought, this is why diversity of experience, this is why diversity of identity is so important. Having somebody in the space shift the space just by their being there, just by their being there and not being tokenized, right? And I'm gonna give y'all the official Quo definition. I've given it before, but tokenization is representation without agency, right? So you want me in a space, but will not allow me the authority to make decisions, will not allow me the freedom and the liberation to shift and change things in order to meet my needs. That is tokenism. So when we have people in the space who are of different identities, different experiences, different missions, if you will, then, and they are given agency, it shifts the space. Allowing people to be who they are just as they are shifts the space in a way that is meaningful. And we say so many times, and I've said often, that opera is the plural of opus, which means many works. And opera is a very big art form. We had that conversation with Latino women in opera. Opera is a very big art form. It can fit more voices, it can fit more stories, it can fit more identities, it can fit more people and more lives. We have to be mindful of what we're doing and to ask ourselves, am I really, really supporting the people creating opera, which then supports this art form? Or am I clinging to what I believe is comfortable and telling myself I'm uncomfortable? Or I'm clinging to what I believe needs to be done for now, right? What is going with the easiest solution as opposed to the most equitable solution, because they're not always the same things, especially at first, right? A lot of this work and a lot of things we promised to do are countercultural. You were just as bold in naming that you were going to do it. Be just as bold and just as humble, right? And making sure that it gets done and do it with other people. So that's our soapbox for why we can't believe what you say because we see what you do. And going forward, we're going to have conversations about it. And we're going to call each other into firm and compassionate accountability to do better and to do better together. Which leads us to our next part and how we're going to shift taking the stage with Kristian Quo.
Indeed. So we have been, both of our schedules are pretty busy, and we want to continue to connect with our Taking the Stage family and just our entire community globally. So we have decided to do a new format. You will see us do bi-weekly shows. Some of them will be live, some of them will be pre-recorded. We will be introducing sort of, I wouldn't say like challenges, but action for practical application of what we talk about on this particular program. And of course, we want to hear back from you how it's going. So we want to hear what you think. We want to hear what you think of the action. Were you able to do it? Was it smooth? Were there rough spots? This sort of thing. So we hope that you will join us in doing this because it's now we're having to do this in real time. We haven't. We're now producing full seasons. We are now at a place in the pandemic where COVID has become endemic, and of course, being in the business of singing, we still have to take precautions but it looks like we're headed back into our season, and we want to make sure that while we're doing that, the things that we have been discussing, feverishly for the past 2.5 years are actually being taken into this place with us.
Right.
So that's sort of how it's going to go. Cole, if you want to add any more to that, but that's basically when you'll see us. You'll see us, bi-weekly, and that's approximately 2 times a month.
Absolutely. And so to put it all together, we will issue a challenge. I am going to call it a challenge, but just some actions and some practical things to start to do and start to apply. Please do them, try them out, see what happens, and then let's come back and see about what's going on within 2 weeks, so that we can have a conversation, to ask questions in real time, to see what is happening, so that we as a community can move forward together. I will issue the first, actually. We titled this episode, I Can't Believe What You Say Because I See What You Do. I encourage everybody to look at what you have told people. Go and look at what you say you are doing. You don't have to tell everybody, right? I know the truth. I know. You don't have to tell everybody right now, though, but go and look and see what it is you have told someone, what it is you have told a community, and whether or not you're actually doing it. Look at some of these solidarity statements. Look at some of these anti-harassment policies. Look at some of the other policies and see if you are actually doing it. Are your policies and your practices actually aligning? Is your intent and your impact actually aligning? That'll be the first. And so when we meet again in about 2 weeks, we'll have a conversation and what that looks like, and how we start to make sure that if they're not aligning, that we start to align them. And if they are aligning, that we strengthen and maintain that alignment in a meaningful way. So that's our first action, first challenge. Check and see if what you're saying is actually what you're doing. And be honest with yourself, because that's the only way that we can move this forward. So yeah, that's what it's going to be like.
So check out James Baldwin if you've not read any of his works or seen any of the interviews that he's given, just because I want to plug him. He's fantastic.
Yes.
One of my favorites. Um, but but I also say that so you can also look at historically how long this has been going on, and understand that people have been making these kinds of calls to action for years. So yeah, there's nothing new under the sun. So just check him out too, because his writings cover some of this as well, um, particularly as it relates to the United States of America.
Mhm.
So, folks, we're going to wrap. But before we do, of course, I want to make sure that I give Quo a chance to do a positive note. I
Yeah.
did again want to drop this line over. If you are in a quote unquote marginalized group, okay, that's our community with mixed abilities. That's our LGBTQIA group. That is our BIPOC folks. Please try not to bear the brunt and the weight and the responsibility of all of society or all of your organization. Take time to take care of yourself and to breathe. Work in the ways that you can to make change. Okay. And when you go home at night, take a big breath. All right. And chill out and rest in knowing that you did what you could. Okay. That's what you're going to have to do. Because I know a lot of us will burden ourselves down. And I encourage you to think about that. All right. Miss Quo, go.
Yes, and building on what Christian just shared, as we care for ourselves, we care for one another. As we care for one another, we care for the work that we're doing together, which is necessary if we are going to be good stewards of opera, if we're going to make good trouble, if we are going to be in a space where people can believe what we say because they see what we do, right? And get to the point where we don't really have to say it as much because they already expect it to be happening. It is possible. I have seen it happen. I am seeing it happen. I believe that we can do more so that it happens more. Please do know that you have what is necessary in order to make that true, in order to make it happen. And you do so by showing up as your full self to the people who are disproportionately impacted by the targeted, right, attention, by not just oppression, but by the systemic issues. Show up as your full self unapologetically. If you notice that you're always comfortable in some way or another, right? Not because you actively wake up and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna be good today, but because society has shifted so that you can be centered, start to decenter yourself. That does not mean dismiss yourself. Start to expand who you are and what you are doing so that what you do includes other people. And what you create includes the voices and the values and the priorities of other people. It is possible. We don't have a choice but to get it done because this is not a game. So, as we all come together, let us continue to center what it means to be opera, what it means to be of many works, of many voices, of many stories, and many experiences. And those are my positive notes.
Thank you so much, Quo. It's a blast returning with you. Thank you all for joining us. And again, please continue to check us out. We have a ton of episodes that are on DallasOpera.tv. So please
Mhm.
feel free to go and watch some of those if you're just now joining us and don't know a lot about us. There are plenty there for you to watch and catch up and see what we're all about, particularly in terms of this topic and the way that it affects the arts and
Yeah.
what we need to do in the arts. Any questions that you have, please feel free to drop them in the comments section. Dallas Opera will let us know, and we're happy to respond to any questions that you have. Thank you so much, y'all. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Peace.
All right. Goodbye.